Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It. You're here with Jason Ott, owner of Empowered Prevention. And today our topic is actually going to be my story. I think it's very important you know who is leading you, especially if you're going to actually take my advice and look into the things that I'm talking about. But you need to know where I've been and why I am so passionate about this and why I've dedicated the rest of my life and a good chunk of my career to helping people prevent, arrest, and reverse disease. I'm more in the training field, the health coaching field, the healer type of field. So I work in there, but I pull a ton of my information from the medical industry as far as the doctors who actually reverse disease. There's plenty of institutes around the country that reverse disease, and I want to share how I even learned about this. And I think the best way to do that is in my own story. So my story starts all the way back in Michigan. I now live in Omaha, Nebraska, but before that, I grew up in Michigan. So in Michigan, we grew up in the country at a very young age. My mother actually got brain cancer. I was about 6 or 7 years old when she got brain cancer. Before she had the cancer, I remember her exercising, and she'd be on her little ski machine, and she'd be doing that thing, and so it left an imprint. I had memories of her before she actually became sick, and it shaped a lot who I was. It got me interested in health. After the fact, I got to watch her go through that, and I got to watch her, inject herself with her drugs to help with the cancer right into her leg. I would get her the vials out of the refrigerator, and this was in the 90s, so it was very aggressive chemo and radiation. And I watched her during that journey. I mean, I still shave my head, just like she had to do during her treatment. And that changed the way I looked at the world. I mean, you're so impressionable when you're a kid, so when something like that happens, it really shapes you. It really does. I don't really think we have a choice, and I don't think I had a choice in this mission, in this direction that my life was going to take anyway, with what I'm doing now. So when I was young, actually, it's interesting, looking back on my past now, I later in my career got colitis, but looking back, I actually had symptoms of it when I was a kid. And, growing up in Michigan, we had fruit farms everywhere. There's fruit stands everywhere. We looked forward to the summer because we'd get these huge flats of strawberries and pounds of blueberries and peaches, and we would just eat fruit on top of fruit and apples everywhere. And there was no talk of, oh my goodness, don't eat fruit because there's sugar in it, and all these weird belief systems that exist now because of the weight loss industry. And it wasn't like that at all. We knew how good it was for us, and we ate it. It was just different. So I remember when I was a kid, I actually had trouble going to the bathroom, and talking about going, poop, actually doing that. So I had trouble where it hurt. I was scared to do it. I remember having spotting of blood in my stool. So we're talking about 9, 10, 11 years old. And my mom would say, go eat some fruit. We're going to have some extra fruit tonight. It'll help you. It'll have some fiber, and it'll help soften your stool. And sure enough, it did. But, we don't always watch our children the best we should. I do now, but we didn't then. So that was something, looking back on it, I'm like, oh my goodness, this existed in my body at a very young age. Well, luckily I did grow up in Michigan. I remember the summers we would go out and we had wild berry patches, and I'd go outside and I'd eat those, and we always had fruit. We would freeze fruit and we would eat it through the winter time. So we always had this, and that actually was pure medicine for me then. And once I escaped my youth, I didn't have those anymore. And I eventually got into exercise. I was a very, very skinny kid. I was almost 6 foot tall and 135 pounds at one time. I loved basketball, but unfortunately I was tall. I had long arms, but man, did I get pushed around because I was just a little beanpole. So where I first got into exercise was my 8th grade year, 7th, 8th grade year, but really 8th, and I started bodybuilding because I needed to get size on me. And at that time on dial-up internet doing research, that's mainly what was talked about. There wasn't a lot of sport-specific training, and I needed to put size on. My basketball coach said I needed to put size on, so I started learning from the bodybuilding community. I don't think the bodybuilding community is wrong, but they will do anything to get size on. And it's all about how big can I make my muscles, how symmetrical can I be, how little body fat, and really, You need to eat a lot of calories and you need to eat a lot of protein. I remember at one time being told, well, if you want to get big, if you want to get strong, you shouldn't get a multivitamin. You need protein, man. You need calories. So the wellness part of it, when we talk about digestive enzymes and probiotics and that stuff, that is not talked about, okay? It was, you need protein, you need size, you need weight gainers. At one time, I was drinking 30-ounce protein shakes that was all milk and then whey protein in it. So I was getting a high amount of antibiotics, a high amount of hormones because it was conventional, and that comes into our body. People don't realize that when we inject it into our food and we eat that food, we then consume those things. Well, it doesn't seem like much, but when I started doing that at a young age, and then 15 years later, I'm having all these health issues, and I've been eating the same way for 15 years, it makes sense because it added up in my body. Not to mention the fact before that, I was having issues of colitis as a child. We just had no clue it was colitis. We just called it constipation. So when my system, in that variability in my system was already very little, and I started to do that, yes, I put size on, and I played my sport, and I got bigger, and I gained weight, and eventually I was a 21-year-old, 230-pound guy, big muscles, I think the lowest I ever got to was 7.5% body fat, and that became my life. Protein, calories, eat. Take whatever supplements you need to. Get bigger, bro. That's the way you got to do it. I chose between nursing and personal training. Obviously, the change that I made in my body in high school was pretty inspiring. So I was like, wow, I wonder what it would be like if I went and I studied this career. What could I learn and how could I help people live a healthier life? Because at that time, I thought that's what I was doing. And on some level, I really was. I was healthier. But my focus was on the external body, and no one had ever talked to me about organ health. No one has ever talked to me about longevity, disease prevention, any of that. It was simply get mass on your body. So I make this decision. I'm out of high school. I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? Nursing, I don't really like that. I had this experience with my mom. They didn't value nutrition. People didn't value exercise, especially in the early 2000s, late 90s. They just didn't, not in the medical community. And I didn't understand that because after my mother's sickness, her body began to fail. And I would send things with her to her doctor of like, well, what about these supplements? Or what if she ate this way? Or what if we got her to exercise? Well, it doesn't really matter. The food doesn't matter. Your mom had cancer. And I'm just like, well, just doesn't make sense. If my mom's body is beginning to break down and not be as strong, how does food not play a role in this? It just wasn't a focus. To me, it was very siloed information. When I think about someone being sick, my thought is this. Well, if you're sick, then why don't we do everything we can? Use Western medicine, use nutrition, use exercise, use spiritual health, use emotional health. Why are we not hitting this from every angle? We're talking about cancer here. We're not talking about I got a little high blood pressure, which I later did have in my life. So I just didn't understand that. Even in high school, the questions began coming up for me. So what I did, I elected to go the personal training and health coaching route because I was going to get to spend an hour a day or however many times my clients would come see me with them, spending time with them, getting to know them, getting a chance to educate and influence them in some sort of way. So I moved to Omaha, Nebraska. I put myself through school. I worked full time. I eventually stacked a whole bunch of certifications, and I was really passionate about working with youth and athletes, and I did that for the first half of my career and got really good at it. And in that time is when that colitis came back. It came back. It started with spotting. It started with a little blood in my stool. Then it became more. And then before I knew it, every single time I went number 2, there was blood. And then it became a lot of blood. Before that came into my life, I started to get high blood pressure, up to where I was pre-hypertensive. Now, you're talking to a guy, when I had pre-hypertension, I was 220, I was about 9% body fat, I could deadlift 450 pounds, I could box jump 50-some inches, When you looked at me, you're looking at a guy where you're like, this dude, he's healthy. This dude's in shape. This dude's ripped. But the fact of the matter was, internally, I wasn't. And that's a paradox a lot of people don't understand, where they're like, well, if you look it on the outside, you must be it on the inside, and that's wrong. It couldn't be further from the truth. Some of the sickest people I've ever worked with were not overweight, and they had multiple autoimmune conditions. They were on multiple medications, and the ones that I'm thinking of right now were in their 20s and early 30s, okay? And it wasn't obesity, because we have this pot of mystery illness and we have this pot of dietary illness. Dietary illness comes with obesity, which is usually heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides. That's usually because that's associated with the obesity. These mystery illnesses, like where you're talking about me, I had bacteria overgrowth. I had a virus in my body. I had technically what I call some sort of an autoimmune condition because of what I was dealing with internally in my body. It's technically a digestive condition. So this started to happen to me, and it brought back all these questions. It made me recheck all the boxes that I went through when I thought I was learning the correct information when my mother was sick. So it made me go back through, and I went back through my certifications, and I'm like, what am I missing here? And so then I started looking into some different nutrition certifications, like I need to find something. Because of the fact of what I saw my mom go through, I didn't have a ton of faith in going the Western medicine route when it came to my digestive condition. At that time, I had trained doctors. I was training pharmacists, so I spoke to them. I wasn't going to go to the doctor. I just asked them, what would you do for this? Have you heard of this? Every answer came back to medications. Every one. So in my head, I'm going, but that didn't work for my mom, and it doesn't work to get rid of it. I want this gone. So that's what I began pursuing is, has anyone reversed this? Can you heal from this? The human body has to heal. I mean, my logic was this. If I break my arm, I put it in a cast, I go home, no one does anything except for my own body assimilates nutrients, takes it to the area that's injured, and heals that bone over the next 6 to 8 weeks. So how do I elicit a faster healing response? Since I was in the athletic field, I've heard of guys where, oh, they'd have an ACL injury and they come back in 8 or 9 months versus there's other guys that were 13, 14 months. Why did it take him so long to heal and this other guy did it like that? How were they living? How did they eat? Did they get more sleep? Were they taking growth hormone or something? I don't know. I wanted to know why. So I aggressively began pursuing that information, and that's exactly when I found a guy named Alfredo Bowman, or Dr. Seve. Now, what really intrigued me about Dr. Seve was 2 things. Number 1, he was an herbalist, but he didn't agree with just giving people herbs. He said, no, why would we just give you herbs? I need to change your diet. I need to change your lifestyle. I need to change the way you view and see your body and what is possible. So I was like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense, because when I looked into the other herbalism and other herbalists, no one really talked that much about diet and the other aspects of your health. It almost mirrored the pharmaceutical industry, in my opinion, because I was just like, well, so I just got to go take these things and I can do whatever I want, it'll go away. It just didn't make sense to me. So I liked what he had to say. And then the biggest thing was, this man was so confident in his message that he took out an ad in 1988 and he says, I cure AIDS, I cure sickle cell, I cure lupus. And he listed off 9 diseases, took an ad out in New York. You can look this court case up. He took an ad out in New York. He was originally from Honduras. And lo and behold, 2 years later, he's in federal court in New York and said, look, man, you can't claim you cure diseases. There is no cure for those diseases. And he said, no, there's not a cure in Western or conventional medicine. You're right to the state of New York. But I don't practice Western medicine, and I don't practice conventional medicine. I practice bio-mineral balance, is what he called, which essentially all it was a whole foods plant-based diet, eating only foods that are high in minerals, which make up our body. And you would eat a lot of those while taking the herbs, while healing your body with various other methods, which emotional health, spiritual health, get some exercise, that type of thing. So I was like, this is intriguing. I have to know more about this. What happened? Further along, they said, look, you're going to go to prison unless you can prove that of these 9 diseases you claim you cure, you have somebody for each disease show up to your grand federal court case, and they need valid medical proof that they were sick, and then valid medical proof from these approved, accredited medical institutes that say they no longer have their disease. And if you have 9 people come in and show the proof of both of those, you're free. We're not going to throw you in jail. The day of his court case, he had 77 people show up, all of them with proof for all 9 diseases, and he walked. So I'm sitting back in my apartment, I'm going, hold on. This is what I was looking for. This man understands what I was questioning this whole time for years of, there has to be something that we're not knowing. And it's interesting because you get what you look for. I didn't want treatment. I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to sit there and say, this is life, I guess I'm going to be this way the rest of my life. I wanted it gone because I was born and I lived years and didn't have this disease. So something I did in my life built up in my body and got me to a point of a dis-ease state. I was in disease. Why? There was a reason for it, because I was meant to be that way. I would have came out of the womb like that, and the first diaper I would have had would have been all filled with blood. My parents would have gone, what the heck is going on? But that didn't happen. There was environmental impact and change in my body over the course of my lifetime that led me to getting these conditions. My first sign of that was high blood pressure for a few years, which then led into spotting, which then led into I didn't go to the bathroom for 4 or 5 days. When I did, there was just blood everywhere, and then it would happen again. I wouldn't go to the bathroom for 2, 3, 4 days. I would get super bloated. I wasn't even eating really because I couldn't, because things didn't move through me. So once I found him, I immediately began changing my diet. I was on a high protein, high fat diet. I was told eat fat, burn fat. When I actually looked at my diet, I wasn't consuming fiber. My vitamins and minerals were very low because I ate very little fresh foods. I was told fruit isn't good for you. It's a waste of calories because you're trying to be big, man. You're trying to be strong. You can't have these waste of calories. You need more protein. You need more fat. You got to eat calorie-dense foods. And so I never did. I listened to what the industry was saying. I listened to the wrong sources, essentially, for what I had going on in my body. Now, if you're perfectly healthy, you want to do that, great. You just need to know the risk. So once I switched, everything changed for me. I began studying herbalism. I bought every book and every herbalist that man, Dr. Seve, learned from. Anything I could get my hands on, I got it, I read it, I learned it. I began mixing my own herbs and compounding my own herbs for myself and learning about them. And so I began ingesting them. I started to do his diet, which was an alkaline diet, which was all plant foods, because anything that is processed in a package or is an animal product, it's acidic in nature. So when we test the pH of it, it's acidic. It's not right, wrong, or different. It's just acidic. When someone is sick, they are acidic. So if we want to get you to the other side of having more oxygen in your body, more nutrients, more blood flow, more healing, we need you alkaline, because that's where our body's natural state is with a pH of 7 or above. So that's where we want to go. So I cut out every acidic food possible known to man because I was miserable. I brought in these herbs. I brought in some supplements, just like a multivitamin and like spirulina and things like that, very nutrient dense. But otherwise, I did my own herbs, raw herbs, compounded them, bought them in bulk, and I began to clean out my body. Within the first few weeks of doing this, I didn't have blood every time I went to the bathroom, so I started to clear up. I actually went to the bathroom once a day, which was really cool because that wasn't happening. And then my bloating started coming down. I started getting more energy. A lot of inflammation came out of my body. So I began and stayed on that road. It probably took me 10, 11 months of staying on this path before I never had another symptom again. Because then I would go after 3 or 4 months, then I went a few months and didn't have any blood in my stool, and I was like, yes, I did it! But later I learned why I had a flare-up again. It wasn't even a flare-up, it's just how your body cleans out. Just like I slowly got spotting, as I got to the pinnacle of my sickness, I slowly got less and less until it just never came back again. That's the same way of healing. Some people get really freaked out because they're like, oh my God, I'm going all the way back. It's like, no, that's the process of how your body heals. Is just like you slowly came into it, you slowly came out. If you've gained 80 pounds, you slowly gained 80 pounds, you're slowly going to do it. And you didn't gain 80 pounds like this. You gained a little bit, you flatlined. You gained a little bit more, you flatlined. You might have came down, you came back up. It's not this linear up and down. So I went through this process over a year later, symptom-free, been completely free of that for years now, which is awesome. Thank God for that. And because of that, that was one person who is doing this, and that person led me to an herbalist, which led me to a doctor, which led me to another doctor, which led me to another institute, which led me on, and before I know, I've found, I mean, you guys see the bookshelf behind me? That top shelf over there, that one right there, all those books right there. Yep. Well, if you're on the podcast, you can't see that, but all those books right there, they're all doctors, they're all herbalists, they're all healers with the same concept. Eat more plants every single day, lower your fat, no processed food or dairy, and you're going to restore the health of your body if you can maintain the lifestyle long enough to do that. There are absolute specifics. Do not get me wrong. I'm going to dive into those when I pick specific diseases and explain and give my resources. But I just kept finding more and more, and I'm like, how do we not know this? How did I get 10 certifications and never learn this? How come this wasn't in my college? How come I didn't learn this in high school? It was absolutely ridiculous that it took me being to the verge of, I mean, it was the darkest part of my life. I was depressed, I was sick. Every part of it was terrible because I didn't know why I was going through this. And if you have been burdened with a chronic illness yourself, you know exactly how I feel. You feel like your life is over and you don't know how you're going to come out of it. And that's really why I need to do this for you guys, is because there is a way out if you're willing to commit to the long journey of it. Because in perspective, if we look at this now, I spent a year and a half rebuilding my body in my late 20s. Okay? I got it together. Let's say it took me 2 years. Great. Now I have 50 years to be healthy. If you're 55 years old, it might take us 3 years, 3 years, depending on what the hell you got going on, to get your health back. You have another 30 years. So in the big picture of your life, if you can look at it that way, yes, you got some work ahead of you. Yes, you got to learn to eat differently. Yes, you got to learn to live differently. Absolutely. Going to be hard. You're going to have some mental and emotional blockages. Absolutely. I'm with you. But when you get through it, that chunk of time, you are going to have so much life left to live. So much. And that's the hope I want to give you. Because I went through all that, I came out the other side, and then I found Dr. Greger and How Not to Die. I found, oh my gosh, I can't even begin to go. I mean, I could list doctor after doctor, but needless to say, there's a lot of resources out there for us. And if I wouldn't, if a couple things. If my mom wouldn't have got sick, I would have never learned this. If I wouldn't have got sick, I would have never learned this. So it's something that isn't talked about enough, and that's the point of why I'm bringing this stuff up, is we need to start talking about it. Because now I know too much about the statistics, and the bottom line is 1 in 2 people will be diagnosed with some condition in their lifetime. I think it's actually higher than that, and I think that we need to be vigilant about this, and we need to start talking about this so it's not so foreign, because it seems like people are scared to be vulnerable. They don't want to talk about it. They think everyone puts on a show, especially on social media, that everything's perfect and I got it together and it's fine. When in reality, when they go home, they're struggling mentally. They're struggling emotionally. They're struggling physically. They're struggling spiritually. And we need to start being comfortable having these conversations. So I wanted to share my story so you guys know where the heck I'm coming from, that I've been through some stuff. My mom is no longer with us. I saw her through that entire journey. Me and my sisters did, okay? I saw myself through this. And then I started my own business where I said, you know what? I'm going to start stepping away from exercise. I'm going to start focusing solely on this. And then I've helped people now do the same thing, putting autoimmune conditions in remission. Of course, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. Of course, those dietary ones go. I mean, geez, I've been doing that for years in exercise. I mean, people come get a personal trainer. They want to lose weight. They want to get healthier. You do that for them. They knock off 50, 60, 100 pounds. They get off their medications. They get their life back. It's a little different when you have things like MS or thyroid, like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, or Sjögren's or Raynaud's. Those are a little more aggressive diseases, and they take time to get out and recover from, but you can. And that's what I'm here to tell you. And I think it's important to know the process, and I wanted to share my story so you guys know where I'm coming from. I'm really excited to keep this thing going. I can't wait to actually get into the resources, because that's where you guys get answers. I want to let you know this. Like I said before, email me, Jason@Empowered Prevention, with any questions, comments, or concerns. I absolutely do one-on-one coaching, but my goal with this is this. I'm going to give you the answers. If you're willing to read the books and find out for yourself, you're going to be able to get control of your health. If you need any help sorting that out, you can, of course, email me. We can do a couple sessions. I do not commit people to long-term contracts. I don't need to. The answers are literally in two places, Amazon.com and your local supermarket. I know that sounds easy, but once I get into these resources, you guys will start to see what I'm talking about, and it'll be pretty cool stuff. All right? So stay tuned. I'm excited for the future of this, and I will talk to you guys soon.